Your mic mute, brother.
Good evening, people.
Yes.
Sorry for that. My mic was muted there. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the conversation. We were missing for like a week, um, especially when it comes to the new episode and stuff like that. Tonight we got a dynamic show, quite a bit of a controversial show tonight because we got a few burning topics which we're going to be talking about. Um, of course, before we get into the discourse, we got to get that disclaimer ready. So, yes, Martin, the disclaimer.
And the disclaimer reads: the views, opinions, and statements expressed on the conversation are solely those of the individual hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our advertisers, Majestic Music Radio, Gem Radio, or Gem Network. The content of this show is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Listeners' discretion is advised. Neither the station nor the network assumes any responsibility for the accuracy, completeness, or validity of the information presented. All content is subject to change without prior notice.
All right,
But as we always say, you
Google
can
it.
Google it.
I gotta Google it. So tonight we want to touch
Mhm.
on a few things because they got quite a few things that are um, burning. What we say topics
Yes.
online on social
Yes.
media, in the news. So let's jump straight into those. Um, One would be the release of Baby Skello after he was put on bail for blasphemous libel. All right. A lot of people had a lot to say about, Baby Skello being an artist, etc., etc. And for somebody who has been in the creatives from birth to now, um, I don't like to be somebody who is brutally harsh, but in these circumstances, I would be brutally harsh. I don't see in any way or form do people classify Skello as an artist. He may be a creative as maybe a creative comedian, but as a creative artist, I don't really know how that works. So saying he's an artist really diminishes the artists who are real artists. That's after saying that. Um, the fact that he was charged for blasphemous libel, and I think this is one of the things that a lot of people in Guyana and I think the social commentators really need to understand because people say it's a crackdown on the freedom of speech. However, there is actually in law, enshrined in law, um, what is called libelous, um, you know, libelous, blasphemous libel. All right. Now, the law says
You know,
everyone.
right. We
Ah,
didn't we didn't do the we didn't read the
the disclaimer.
yeah.
Yeah, the disclaimer went. I
Oh,
don't know. I don't know if your volume was up was at that time when the disclaimer went. The disclaimer went.
maybe the volume was down.
Yeah. All right. Now I'm going to read the from our laws of Guyana the issue regarding excuse me um, blasphemous libel and it's title 24 offense against religion. All right. And this is part 5 offenses against religious morality and public um, convenience. All right. And it says title 24 offenses against religion 374 or page 347. Everyone who publishes any blasphemous libel shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and liable to imprisonment for 1 year. It shall be a question of fact whether any, um, sorry, you seem to be having some sort of feedback. It also says, it shall be a question of fact whether any particular public matter is or is not blasphemous libel. All right. I think, and there's a paragraph still to go that I just want to highlight. Provided that no person shall be liable to be convicted on any indictment for blasphemous libel only for expression in good faith and in decent language, or attempting to establish by arguments used in good faith and convened in decent language any opinion whatever upon any religious subject. All right. Now, this basically is trying to explain to the reader in legal jargons that basically, and it outlines it in the first line. Number one says, anyone, everyone, or everyone who publishes any blasphemous libel shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and is liable to imprisonment for 1 year. All right. So let's go back to the issue of Baby Skello and people saying he's an artist. Um, it was on fear that he got remanded. Now he's on bail. Now the laws of Guyana are pretty archaic. They're old. They're old colonial laws, but they still. I mean, every country just people in the country just can't make a decision and say, okay, well, some of the laws we'll observe and some will not. It doesn't work like that. Whether a law is archaic or not, because even if we look at the situation in the US where, for example, President Trump would use, for example, the Insurrection Act, that's a very, very old archaic law that was basically in the dust in the US Congress. Nobody even thought about reaching back to use that particular law, but he did. So, and this is something that another aspect of this is that Guyanese got to understand that ignorance to the law, there is no excuse. So that's one of the things that people have to understand when they're saying stuff, especially on social media, about okay, this is why this person was locked up. You have to understand the law, and it's critical because a lot of people come out and they say, oh, this is wrong or that is wrong, but they're not looking at the issue of the law, the legalities of these things.
So for me, of course I would have mentioned it on our morning program, right?
Uh-huh.
Where I stand still firmly that Baby Skello shouldn't have been arrested and he should have been more so tailored, right?
And
For
this
lack
was
of better
this
word.
and this was because you said he was mentally challenged.
Correct. So I would have met Skello on a video set,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Yeah.
And I had a conversation with him. I said, man, you know them thing you be doing is stupidness. The man say, yeah, buddy, but what else? You understand? Which proves he got sense,
What else?
right? Which proves he
Mm-hmm.
have sense, to me, at least. So he
Okay.
understands what he's doing. But one could only understand so much to the capacity. Because if you continue to do the same thing, then I will have to then look at you with more questions, and not just in the capacity of, oh yeah, this man's smart. Compare me to Baby Skello. It's easier to put me in jail based on how I speak, based on how I dress, based on how I act. Right? If I would have done the same thing, it would have been understandable. Yes. But Skello, which is clearly a slow individual in every shape and form, right? And not just him. You look at his dad. You look at Chinese man who's around him. Look at his entire circle.
But my thing
It's
is,
a group of slow individuals, brother.
yeah. But being slow is no excuse. I mean, you couldn't be in the US and tell the cops you live slow or act slow, and they'd be like,
Right,
you live slow.
I mentally challenged. Right.
You mentally challenged, so they can leave you alone because you did something like that.
No.
You couldn't be mentally challenged and do blasphemous libel.
Well, keep in mind that goes against human rights.
Well,
somebody
human
accountable.
Rights, you
Hold
can't
on.
invoke,
To hold
you can't
somebody
invoke human
accountable,
rights for blasphemous libel.
brother, to hold somebody accountable of that nature for coming out and cussing or using derogatory phrases against anything, any religion.
Yeah.
You're going against human rights. And this is naturally why UK doesn't have that very specific law anymore either. And a bunch of other countries doesn't have the same laws.
The UK doesn't have the blasphemous libel law?
No, that was abolished.
Okay. But the UK does have a different type of law that replaces that blasphemous libel, where if you did basically throw aspersions at somebody's religion, you will be locked up in the UK for doing that.
So that have to be broken down for me, because me as an artist, me as a creator, right? Yes, what Skello came out and said, no, he was clearly acting in his highest dunce form.
Right? I don't think he was acting in a dunce form. I think somebody misguided Baby Skello into doing that at a very sensitive time. Because why would he come
naturally always misguided, brother?
I don't think so.
That's what I'm telling you. He's always natural.
I think somebody guided him to do that because the fact that it was around the time with the
Malachi.
No, hold on. The fact that
besides
it was
the somebody lady. No, hold on. Besides the somebody lady, Sang Skello never done anything that makes sense.
Bro, I couldn't care less what you talking about. As a matter of fact, I don't pay attention to somebody who's not even an artist, but more a comic. That's fine for who want to pay attention to that. But what I'm saying, he had to be guided to do that because of the sensitive nature at the time when he released that particular bit of nonsense. When he released that nonsense, that was around the time when a lot of people were accusing the owner of the Doubleday Hotel of being a sacrifice person. All right, let's not run from these kinds of nonsensical things that people put up and call it something. Now that was around the time when this accusation against the Doubleday Hotel was going on, and he perceived that the best way to jump into it was to again attack the man's religion by saying all those things in that song, and that is why he was arrested. He was asked to come into the ERC, which he didn't turn up. And then who's Baby Skello not to turn up when he's requested? When Critic was requested to go to the ERC, he turned up. So why didn't Baby Skello go? Because he's special. So that's why he should get locked up.
No. I do condemn what he did. Don't get me wrong. Like I said, he was acting in his highest form ever.
That's the highest.
But we also have yeah, we also have to keep in mind that there's more than one factors in play. Even if we want to use the aspect of, all right, he was probed into doing what he did by other individuals with more sense. So now you
Of
just can't
course.
hold one person accountable. You have to hold
Mm-hmm.
the entire camp, whoever that may be, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to sit down, of course, and I'll send out the official invitation to at least two or three individuals or the
Mm-hmm.
entire head. Yes. Because me not slow as Skello, but me ain't the brightest in the bunch either. Right? And I just speak the truth.
Mm-hmm.
But I would like to just have an understanding, more clarity on their
Mm-hmm.
functions,
The
right?
ERC,
And
right?
where they stand. Correct.
Mm-hmm.
And where they stand with certain other issues, not just the
All
Skello
right.
issue.
But before we go to that, just let me clear up where you said the abolition of the blasphemous libel laws in the UK. That law was
Mm.
abolished in 2008, but was replaced with what is called existing laws of hate speech, incitement against religion, defamation laws against religion, those type of laws, harmful speech statements, aggressive speech actions against religions. Those are the laws that
So
we
it's
that have
specific,
now replaced.
tailored.
Exactly, those are like, and those are just a few of them I'm touching on here. Under
Mm.
those laws that have now since 2008 in the UK, that have now replaced that simple law that we have, the English common law of um, blasphemous libel. So there are approximately about 200 odd laws that have now replaced that blasphemous libel to ensure that nothing like that plays out. So they have even gone
Hence,
further in cracking down on stuff like that.
hence
Um,
the tailoredness of it, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Sharon.
all right, so I just say good night to everybody.
Mhm.
We're back. But listen, this whole thing with baby Skello.
Mhm.
I The country got laws that is still existing, and if he did anything within the line against those laws, we definitely know he gotta pay the consequences. He gotta serve, or he gotta go according to what the law. Or they actually judge him towards in the sense of that, right? But what I say, it's I can give you an example. This is where the country is not proactive, and we don't have no adjustments of laws and policies. Quite
Mhm.
everything goes according to how people want it to go whenever it's interest or has some kind of thing to affect them. You know, look at it. Have we been blaspheming or get kids against other people's religion in the schools back in the day when we had the kids only saying our Father who art in heaven? Because we had the Hindus, Muslims, and Christians saying it all together.
Mhm.
Is that blasphemous?
Was it something that
I think that's
was
unto
was it
kids.
compulsory? Did you have to do it?
In schools, bro, you don't close your eye and say the prayers back in the day by the problem.
Who's do that?
Huh?
Who?
There's a problem back in the day, I suggest, because that's what the prayer was back in the day. Now it if you change that, okay, we take all these things out of school, then you gotta start looking at laws that concerns
I think based on what I've seen in Guyana, religious tolerance is something that Guyanese, in my estimation, have exercised the most, because I have literally seen a man there on one side of the road and a mosque on the other side of the road, and children who are Muslim and Hindus go to the same school. Religious tolerance is a thing that is like understood in Guyana. Everybody knows this. I have never seen people actually from, let's say, is a Islamic person come out and make any derogatory comments against the the deity of the Christians or of the Hindus or the Baha'i or Buddhism. None of that.
Uh,
Um,
did anybody follow the reason why critics
mm,
is having that issue right now with the education minister?
well, I know
It wasn't aligned. It wasn't aligned with James Kello.
yeah, he was talking about baby Skiller, but he was putting the blame on the ministry. He was saying this is one of the issues, one of the problems that Guyana is facing, and if he putting it at the feet of Priya Manichan, that
No, she came out and talked about it. She
mm,
said something concerning his case.
no, but what she was saying that she thought that it was a little harsh that the magistrate would put him in remand, seeing that persons who did probably robberies and had more serious cases, they were able to access bail.
Okay.
All right. But that is not outside. Remember, although she knows the law, she knows that the judge who's sitting there is well within his prescriptive rights to hand down the sentence, because based on what the legal framework of Guyana says, if he does that, he can be imprisoned for a year.
No, because we know.
Correct.
It says that. It
Yeah.
does say that.
So
If you break that particular law, you get in prison for a year.
so this is where I stand with Priya when she mentioned he shouldn't be in jail, right? Keep in mind, he is a slow individual, right? Put that at the top of the list. Skello naturally slow, and this is from experience. Now, to judge him in the same capacity as
Mm,
the old laws, even a new law, right, would be wrong. So this is where the natural ethic part would come in. You could look at Skello, you could listen Skello and tell that he's challenged. Now, my thing is the ERC should have made it their mission to have a sit down with him, right? You can't just do one attempt. I'm yet to see anybody from the ERC. So I'm assuming it was a post put out there that he should come in, right? But it can't just be one attempt to fix the situation. They
mm,
should have, while condemning it, which I do believe in also, it should have been more of an effort to educate him. So I would look at the LGBTQ and every other letters in between
mm,
community, right? To say, well, when an artist, let's use the baby
mm,
or anybody else, when an artist or an individual comes out and speak up against the community in a derogatory manner,
mm,
everybody does come down on it by rights, or come down on the individual by rights. You hold
mm,
them accountable, right? You have to. But you also have to educate them. And I've seen the community done it time and time, even in Guyana. Even a little bit cuss out and fight one. I've seen videos of Otisha sitting
mm.
down and explaining to people what is what. And I believe the ERC should have done that. And even in the future, they have to educate you first. And if you continue, throw the book at you, of course. I support that.
Well, I'm 100% in support of you with the part when it comes to the education of the population, because I haven't seen a lot of what we call PSIs, or um, public service information, out there on the TV, in the newspaper, on social media, especially dealing with the rules and guidelines from the ERC when it comes to what you can and cannot disseminate online, or what you can have in public spaces. It's not like in Jamaica, for example, where the Broadcast Commission of Jamaica has a guideline that says in public spaces, these things are not permitted, period. Certain types of music, certain types of things are not permitted, period. Now, that what we need in Guyana basically are structures that have enforcement. Because what I do believe is happening in Guyana is people usually, and this is a new phenomenon for Guyanese. Guyanese have always had this attitude of you say what you want. Once it come to your head, you could say what you want. All right. Not understanding that, hey, it was under APNU in 2015 when they got into power that they introduced this Cyber Act bill that deals specifically with the internet and what is done online, what what people can and cannot say online. All right. Now, now that that is in full effect in terms of, and I'm very glad that that came in effect because Guyanese have had this nasty habit of destroying people's character with no information, which is basically defamation of character and liable. The exact same thing that Baby Skello is being charged for presently and has been on bail for. We have to understand in Guyana that once you do not have the facts in your hand, do not go out there and say things about individuals because it can cost you a lot. And this is what Guyanese have to understand. We have to get to that point. All right. We have to get to that point where we understand that if we're going to make mention of people in any situation, we must have facts. We must have factual information. And this is, one of the things that kind of holds back um, stuff in Guyana. Because, for example, this particular issue with Baby Skello, which is a non-issue as far as I'm concerned, is being politicized by only one party. One party is jumping up, which is the APNU, and they're saying, "Oh, Skello should not have been locked up." Blah 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 blah. But let's look at it like this, and I'll give you this scenario, Sherwin. I challenge anybody from the same opposition that's saying that Baby Skello should not have been locked up for breaking the law. I challenge any one of them to let one of them have a song that has the same derogatory comments, but put the name instead of Lachmi or Mother Lachmi, put Allah in that position. All right. And I guarantee that they're going to be dead. So, this thing about, oh, freedom of speech and freedom of religion, let's get real with it because people know what and what to say and when not to say it. Why didn't Baby Skello say Allah? Because they would have found his head on a mop stick somewhere. Guyanese got to know these things. When you have 1.3 billion people that actually support, that believe in a deity, you cannot violate people's religion. I mean, listen, the Africans in the West really have nothing to say because those people jumping up on social media and saying, what are they talking about? The blood of Jesus and all these other things. I just want them to know that Christianity is not an African religion. So those people who doing that, please stop doing that because it makes us even look even more stupid in the eyes of people who have maintained their religion for eons because Hinduism is way older than Christianity. Yeah. Christianity started at the birth of Christ, which is called Anno Domini, or in the year of our Lord, AD. So it's like 2,000 years after that. Sanskrit has been around at least 5,000 and more. Go ahead, Martin.
So, based on the definition of blasphemy, right?
Mm-hmm.
In the biblical aspect, in the scriptures,
yeah,
it is, as used in scripture, the word blasphemy means expressing something disrespectful or evil about God,
Right.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So if we're to tie that definition into a new religion, because how much religion are there today? A couple thousand, right? So that
No,
means if
they're
I'm to come out and say something blasphemy about the Scientology community, they have the right to put me on a mop stick,
Scientology does
jail
not
me.
Scientology does not believe in a creator or a god. They believe in science.
But it's a religion, so I could come out and cuss science all
It is a
day.
religion. It is a religion, but they don't have a deity that is representing a supreme being. Christianity does, Buddhism does, Hinduism does, Islam does. Those are the four major religions on earth. Scientology, atheists don't have a God creator. So there's nothing to abuse or to insult them of, except that maybe their scientific calculations don't add up. But
And then, so my
deities
thing would be,
are like separate. Mm-hmm.
my thing would be, who determine what is disrespectful? Because growing up in Guyana, right? Talking back to your mother or your parents or anybody older than you is disrespectful,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
But I can't naturally sit down and let anybody, I don't care what age you be, who you are, tell me something that don't make sense and I can't answer back
Well,
without them considering me
I
disrespectful.
laid one thing on the table, which is plausible and logical. And I challenge anybody to challenge this. If anybody is in dispute of what I'm saying and they think that, well, no, what I'm saying is wrong, I challenge them to create a song like Baby Skello, use the same lyrics, put Allah in it. That's all. That's the end of that argument there when it comes to religion. That's the end of that argument there. All I telling them to do the exact same thing. If you got any problem with what happened with Baby Skello, you do the same thing. Add the word Allah. Don't worry with latch me or thing no more. Add the word Allah. Put it up on YouTube and promote it. Go on and live and talk and stuff and see what happens. Do that. That's my challenge for those people who are in support of what Baby Skello had to say about the Hindu religion. Because in my estimation, nobody is supposed to say anything about another man's religion. Because you can't tell somebody else what to believe in. Just like nobody else can determine what you should believe in. If those are the principles that the world runs with, somebody like Skello can't come along and break the rules. Who is he? And you just mentioned he's a mentally challenged guy. So you're saying a mentally challenged guy has an opinion versus 1.4 plus billion individuals on the planet? I don't think so. So that particular argument with Baby Skello, whoever, I've seen it on Facebook that it is the PNC that is supporting that kind of nonsense. That's absolute stupidity. Because if it's enshrined in law, then any lawyer just goes back to the legal framework and says, okay, well, you broke the law. How do we then fix that? Is that you apologize if you have to go on bail, then there's bail, and then you make moves to fix that situation. But to then double down and say that, oh, you didn't do it, when there's an actual recording of you saying all this stuff, makes no sense. And then you double down on it with your father. It don't come together to me. It doesn't come together for me. I mean, I don't understand. If somebody had done that in Guyana, and again, this is my challenge. If somebody wants to say that what I'm saying is incorrect, I give them the challenge. Sing the song that Baby Skello sang and just add Allah and put it up. And let's see what happens.
So you agreed on that the laws in Guyana is fitting for as it is, or they should have changes?
It needs to have a lot of change. As a matter of fact, I think I'll tell you that when I was in Parliament, sitting looking at the two parties arguing at when, because I know for a fact the PPP was proposing a referendum, which is a total legal framework change, because we have archaic laws. We have a legal frame laws in Guyana that say you can't beat out your carpet after 6 o'clock. Those are old colonial laws. We need to have referendums to change those nonsense. Now, you have a group of individuals who are sitting on the opposition side who are claiming when they get out of Parliament that yes, this is what they want to do. But when they're in Parliament, that is not what they want to do. They want to keep those very same old laws in there because it gives them the ability to not go to jail. Which politician in Guyana, we're saying for the 59 years that we have been an independent nation, we have been totally void of corrupt politicians. Absolutely none of them push their hand in the cookie jar. That's what we say. So understand the level of stuff that we have to face as Guyanese. This is not politics. This has nothing to do with politics. This has to do with our legal framework. And if we have representatives that are supposed to be representing us in Parliament that are unwilling to actually look at the real frameworks that need changing and deal with that, instead of going in Parliament and making really stupid comments, like for example, one parliamentarian was in there and made a really foolish analogy. She said, and it never came out of my mind. She said, Mr. Speaker, if a parent has to send a child to school and they're paying $300 per day at the end of the week, that parent has to find $9,000 for that child to go to school. And I was like, there is no way I can give you the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, this is a mistake. Because obviously, you know, you're going to Parliament sittings. You know, if somebody's going to prepare your script or you're preparing your script, you had time to read this thing over before you got in Parliament and read that foolishness. And this is the kind of stuff that I cannot tolerate with politicians at all. And you see this mostly, this kind of stupidity, you see this mostly on the opposition side. I mean, outside of Charles Ramson and his Batty Lions instead of Banty Lions, I mean, somebody would say, oh, well, he could have misenunciated the word. But calculating something on paper that was supposed to be in front of you, and you're making a particular argument for parents and the amount of money, and you're talking about finances, but you can't calculate that 3 times 5 is actually 30 and not 9. Sorry. I fail to see those individuals as leaders for me. I don't know how individuals in Guyana look at what they classify as leadership. All right. For somebody to be a leader for me, they have to have a real brain. And a lot of individuals, like we were saying earlier, if we are to, Guyana needs a system, just like what you guys were talking earlier, where every person that's going into Parliament has to be voted in there. And if you get in there and you're not functioning or you can't deliver on the job, the constituents can then withdraw you, pull you back.
Well,
all right.
That's the thing. Policies have to be changed. You know?
Yeah, go ahead, Sherwin.
So, well, what I'm saying is that there is a very, I think everything is just, everybody's just busy. For me,
Pulling their
infrastructure,
pockets.
infrastructure to show people we're doing whatever.
Mhm.
Just for the show. It's more of what's pleasing to the eye and what looks busy. But the real the real sense of what policies are in place really, or
Mhm.
what adjustments are being made to make the country a better place in the sense of the morals that we accustomed to from the past has been failing or has been benefiting only the politicians and not the people. The people has to make a demand and they have to come, like you said, voted in and holding them accountable. You gotta get that system. That's the only way you might have this
The
changes.
only way, trust me, we change that system in Guyana is the referendum. It strips away that executive presidency, which is an absolute farce in a country like Guyana.
But where would it gonna be? It's gonna be the sense of we understand the president is gonna choose his ministries, blah blah blah, whatever, whatever, whatever. But the constituent leaders, right, is gonna come in and they're gonna be a different arm of the whole body of parliament or whatever. So
But
it's a
then, but then you wouldn't be able to recall them, and this is the big problem, Sherwin. The problem we have in Guyana is this: when, let's say, the PPP wins, they will sit down in their Congress, the General Secretary and his group. They will decide who the ministers will be. All right. Now, if that minister is not functioning like Charles Ramson, cannot function in the Ministry of Culture, there is no constituent to say this guy is not functioning, recall him
no.
or replace him. There's no constituent. His party is not going to say reshuffle this guy to another position. So you need to have a change in the laws that govern Parliament and that govern Guyana so that you can have one when election come around. Yes, we take off at the top. Yes, we want this party to govern. But at the same time, we want, you can also have other people, like in the US. People have voted for Donald Trump to be the president of the US. And as they come down, they vote Akeem Jeffries for the House. And they vote somebody else, another Republican, for the Senate.
But that's where the votes, right? If you're not functioning in your ministry, that's where the votes comes in.
But in order for that to happen, Sherwin, in order
No,
for that to happen, it has to
what's
start
saying
with the legal framework, has to
that
change.
happens, right? It comes where when you come to say you want this to finance a project or something that you have in mind as a ministry, but we know you're a failure. Now you're gonna get in the pressure because right away when you put your thing out there, right, which we gotta hold you accountable to, we gotta hear what you're saying and if you're making sense. And then okay, listen, that thing ain't gonna concern me, but you the thing is sounding like if it gonna make sense to everybody. So right now the votes now go against him. So he ain't getting through with nothing. Now as a minister now, he gonna put you in a place to say, bye, I got to work and I got to know how to negotiate because I'm doing things that is good enough for everybody or it's gonna deal with a certain set of people a certain way. This is how the thing's supposed to go.
I'll
But
tell you. No, go ahead.
I said, but what going on now is whoever is the with more seats, and they get their own people. You know what I mean? They don't care if it gonna make sense or it don't make sense. It's all about we doing it for the party.
Well, again, it goes back to the issue of the referendum, because we need a system. Guyana needs a system where every minister that is in a position has to show accountability in that position. All right, they have to show that they're actually putting in the work in that position. They just can't be there and not do anything, not have any deliverables. All right. For example, there was a snippet that I saw a few weeks ago where a parliamentarian was questioning Charles Ramson on the issue of the studios that the government proposed to have built across the country. And he could not give any information on where exactly one of these studios was located in. I think it was in Region 10, which is shameful. I have also pointed out an issue where a grant was given to a young man for the creation of a database and a website for Guyanese artists and their music. And we are now in 2025. And none of these things that they've said are going to be delivered have been delivered. All right. Now, this is just in an attempt to avoid one particular issue. All the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sport, and of course the Attorney General's chambers, because I got to bring Anil into it as well, because he was approached by the US copyright and the French copyright agencies about Guyana's updating of their copyright laws. And he said, okay, well, he's leaving it for CARICOM to really look at the issue and come up with the umbrella for CARICOM, which I think is really a backward step, because every other country in the CARICOM region has changed theirs. They have gone ahead and made adjustment to their laws, some since 1974, some since 1983 and 84. Guyana is the only one that has the CARICOM Secretariat head right here in Guyana. But what? We are the pirates of the Caribbean, because our radio stations don't pay for any content. Our TV stations definitely don't pay for no content. They pirate. So if you have a pirate mentality, you have a country with a pirate mentality. That's all that's happening. And that needs to change. All right. Now, in the upcoming elections, when people are talking about, okay, let's look at policies. If I have to look at policies, I haven't seen a policy from any of the opposition so far that shows me, okay.
Is there a policy from the ruling party? Because
several. Not all of them I agree with, but there are several.
You know, Malachi. How can there be policies that the ruling party is giving you? They got so much chances through the years, -5, that the developing world is showing you and giving you a blueprint. This is how we developing, body. This is how we getting it together. This is how people or creatives are becoming multi and filthy rich. And it is becoming something that is going to help the economy.
Yep.
You telling me that they got policies in place?
No, not for that. Not policies for IP, not policies for IP development, but they do have their policies for structures in the government and policies that they're running on the ground.
No, structure has been going on in the same type of structure from the time they took over in 92. There is not a lot of changes. Recently, for the past 5 years, there might have been a little more boost and zest in what they want to do at a fast pace. But if you look at the structure all along, for me, I'm just giving you my opinion.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same structure that's carved within a way that the country does not, or the people of the country, which is, for me, the middle class is one of the most important aspects of a country.
Yeah.
But all that I know, the middle class of Guyana, for all the years, from then, still is not at the place to
Where they
get
should be.
have a boost. And if the country middle class, if you got a government comes in, or a government that is eventually, let me give an example. The president, the prime minister of Jamaica take over like what? He only had 2 terms so far, and he's about to go to his 3rd term, right?
Yeah.
Just give you an example. The amount of things that this dude do, in the sense of not just infrastructure, but I'm talking about if you listen to his policies in the sense of what he's putting and trying to tell the people, you might be uncomfortable for a little while, but whatever I'm doing here is to make sure that it connects with you, especially from the middle class, to boost you up, right? But he only had two terms. Telling me from 92 to now -5. Then we reached the place where we had the highest GDP growth. We got money like rice. But
that's in the 5 years you're talking about. You know that, right?
Right. What I'm saying, in the 5 years, we got money like rice. But all you focus on is to refocus on what you was doing all along. It's like a recycle of what you was doing all along. You come back.
I'll tell you my opinion on that. One, Guyana's never been in a position where we can actually be in like a determining factor of where we want to go in terms of our destiny. For the first time, we are in a position where the country has got the resources that can actually change.
There's minus the oil. We always got a lot of resources.
Yeah. But it is the first time.
Now it's for the first
minus.
Time. Right.
What we have to understand, you mentioned 1992. Why I wouldn't go back there is because in 1992, when the PPP took over, Guyana was in serious debt. Guyana was called a HIPIC nation next to Haiti, right? We owe the IMF a lot of money. That wasn't a PPP thing that happened there. Right.
So give PPP 2 terms after.
No, they had to reconstruct that, pay that debt off, right? And mind you, their being in power is actually the people had to be the people voting for them to be in power, because there's no way that they could rig or they could bully their way in. That couldn't happen. So they were voted in. They have to balance, and this is the thing that I listen to a lot of the politicians in Guyana, and they don't fully understand the economics of Guyana being where it is. A lot of people believe, and I think a lot of people get caught up in social media and believe that social media may be how a country is run, or maybe it's run like how a business is run. It's not. Balancing an economy is a totally different thing than balancing a business, right? An economy has several different cogs in the wheel that got to move. You have trade, you got commerce, you got production, you got industries, you have manufacturing, all of those things, facets, you have to understand how to balance a budget, all right? Which we know the opposition ain't really astute when it comes to mathematics. And I mentioned that earlier, when one of them would say 3 times 5 is 9, which I really, that's elementary for me. A child should have known that. You can't be a parliamentarian and not know that simple calculus. You can't be in parliament and not know the simple calculus for 54 years of our parliament being in place, that the voting structure moves based on how many seats we have. We have 65 seats in parliament. So if one party has 33 seats, they have the majority. If you have 32, you are in the minority. If we don't have people who have the simple mindset to understand that, and they will come up with I don't even want to use the words on, because it can end up in expletives. Will come up with stuff that really absolutely makes no sense.
For me, we're going back on the things that really is not relevant, because that, without in the first place, has no relevance. The thing is like this. What I'm saying, I'm not trying to say that the PPP is not the party that should be in power. I'm not saying, I'm not trying to choose nobody else in place or in favor in front of nobody. My thing is, right, is that you have been in power for so long, right? For me, always pointing fingers, but not actually coming up with nothing that is really working to make it move from point A to. You can't tell me, you can't continue showing me. Listen, you can continue bringing a child. You continue bringing. You give him from his small. You give him all the toys in the world. You give him the best sneakers and clothes, right? You put him to be the best individual, but at the end of the day, the child has no ethics, no training, and no education. What a child becomes when he get older to deal with himself. Correct. It's the same thing going on in the country. We're giving you the best roads. We're giving you the best hospitals. We're giving you the best schools, structures, right? We're giving you all these different things. But where is the, like you said, the amendment? Where is the structure on the amendments of laws? Where is the betterment policy?
Well, trust me, it goes right back to what I was saying earlier. And it has to do with and this is something that me and Martin say this on the radio. When we talk about the government, I'm not just talking about the ruling party, because the government is all those people who sit in parliament and get paid taxpayers' dollars to be in there.
You could make more if you could push hard and put the emphasis on getting money where you want it. You could push hard on emphasis on getting policies and
in place to help people. No, let me say this now, Sherwin.
For so that I bring it up and then knock it down.
Listen to this.
It don't make sense.
APNU has been in power, has been in parliament. They're sitting all the time. They were in power for 5 years or 4 years. I had several consultations with several high members in APNU, from Harmon to Kathy Hughes. We had the meeting about the creative development, what we're going to do. I invited Eddie Grant. All these people came out. At the end of it, it was a glorious waste of time because nothing happened. All right? They're still sitting in parliament. These same individuals are still sitting in parliament. They have not come up with a manifesto for 2025. And I have said on radio, I want to see at least one party come with the creatives in mind. That IP law update and enforcement of those laws, that should be it. Now, when we talk about developing the human resource capacity in Guyana, that is exactly where the emphasis should be, on the IP issue, bro.
Yeah, but
sorry. No, even the other day when Frank Anthony, the health minister, came out and he was talking about we've got to look at products coming out of Guyana and medicine. I'm glad they decided to look at that issue, because once they start to look at that issue, they would realize once you go into pharmaceuticals, you have to start focusing more on IP and IP law protection. So having those those lapses in the law in your country where it's not being enforced will not be able to happen anymore. Because a lot of people don't understand this. Lime that is created by new GPC. You find it on the shelves in the Caribbean, but you don't really find it on the shelves in Guyana, right? You notice?
Not as much.
But
Because the companies find it more lucrative to produce in Guyana and market outside of Guyana.
that's because somebody maybe from out of Guyana is who got a monopoly and is actually getting that product done. And maybe that is something that is controlled by any Guyanese market.
Yeah,
But it's,
Lime is controlled by a Guyanese company. It's created by a Guyanese company,
so it's created by a Guyanese company.
marketed and everything by a
Labeled
Guyanese.
by a Guyanese company.
Huh?
Labeled by a Guyanese company.
Yeah, everything.
And sent out to another without any protection.
It's on the shelves in Barbados. It's on the shelves in Trinidad. It's on the shelves in Antigua. I've seen it personally in the supermarkets, and a lot. In
Well,
comparison to Guyana, not a lot.
I'm gonna come down to the levels of where we put in the ratio of coming into the millennium world, right? And we know that we know that Abnu FC came into power.
Mm-hmm.
It was something like it happened like oh shit. Sorry, this happened. This just happened. Um anyway, they come in and actually with all that's being said, they all are a surprise bench like why? What we gonna do now? Now
So they've been shocked.
everybody start pressuring them to fulfill all that wasn't being fulfilled all the time. At the same time, like you're saying, that man who trying to think about the cookie jar, who trying to think about all the different ways of making the self comfortable and all these different things, which is the wrong way to think in the first place. But anyway, I'm saying
So
I don't think it was an easy task. I think it might have been a good effort if you'd seen that effort from them, which we never saw an effort from them. But I think it would have been a good effort to see them say, you know what? Yes, let's make a move on something that is really important and needed so that we can retract on the same thing and bring it up back after even though we
Brother,
lose.
honestly, the only thing that any government, the PPP, the PNC, whichever party could bring that is different, that is absolutely transformational to Guyana, is that what I've been talking about for 20 odd years, which is the IP law issue. That is the only transformational issue or thing, policies that can actually start to change the perspectives of the youth, start transforming the climate on the ground, including the business climate. That particular law, the updating of those laws and the enforcement will change the climate immediately.
But Malachi, I guess if the bloggers them they know or understand those laws and understand where those things are coming from, it might have been a bounce
No,
that
well, I hear what happened. I think the bloggers know what's going on because I
you know
see a lot of the bloggers will come out and complain how they know people in America making money off of their thing and they got the same views, but they ain't getting a dime. They ain't getting a cent. I don't care who
So
them is again and they got how much million or whatever, they ain't getting a dime.
while I believe members of this current government and the functions are incompetent, the previous one hold that trophy like they make it. right? Now, they would have came into power using Sherwin's analogy. They would have came into power shocked. We understand, no problem. But you can't run for government, run for president, or any office for that matter. And when you do get it, you ain't know what to do. That is my problem, right? And it would flow over into any ministry. And this is why I naturally have more than one issues with more than one ministries, because the people them who's heading the ministry, I doubt they were going for those positions, but at the same time, you should have been prepared. You understand me? You can't come in office and you don't know everything across the board. And I'm pretty sure when I look at Jack Dio and I know brilliance, I'm pretty sure if you're going into housing ministry, you're at least coming in with some type of sense of the housing sector, right? I would believe so.
Surround yourself with people who know something about the housing sector.
Well, just coming in with the sense. Because I could go in a business like I did, right? And I had no clue of that business in particular, but I made friends with everybody I could in that business, right?
But that's called networking.
So what happened? The ministers can network. Ramson have never networked outside of the people in boxing and them rest to get to you.
No, but that's what I say. Well, Ramson does network with Demon. So
That's what I'm saying.
He doing much networking. He networking with people like Demon and them thing. He networking with the actual creatives who making stuff happen.
But at the same time, brother, the issue for me as a Guyanese who live in Guyana, who want to live in Guyana, I cannot support the back to frontness of individuals being in position, having no clue of what they're doing, and more so, not taking the chance to learn. You got 5 years, it's like going for a degree. And I would say all of the ministries is holding a C and a B if we're to grade them as an examiner. If we're to grade their work in the last years, they've been into office, nobody's coming out with A+. Not one ministry, not one minister.
Of course, that's your opinion.
Of course. I mean, we could give it to Jill, but at the same time, we still have problems.
I won't give it to Jill at all. The only person that I've seen actually really be on the cutting edge is Joe Hamilton. Nobody else. Joe Hamilton is the labor minister. He's the one that had them do the app for to greater access people in the labor sector. All that kind of development, he's the one who's structuring that, looking at revising the labor laws and stuff like that, ensuring that he's always present to let these foreign investors and foreign people who are coming in and hiring Guyanese, let them know their laws. I'm very glad that he looked at the labor laws and decided, hey, well, when it comes to construction, finally, we have some laws that says, listen, they have to have the PIP equipment, they have to have the hired hat, the boots, those kind of things. You understand what I'm saying?
Brother, so I doubt he did that. He didn't do that just because he had the brilliant idea. He do that because most of the construction people coming in is foreigners. And I guarantee you, me coming from America with an American company, an American background, working in Guyana or any other country, and you don't have the standard to support what I'm coming with, you're going to get it right or we're going to leave. And that is why that ministry in general had to up the game.
I don't think so, because if you're coming into business in my country, you don't operate by your laws. You operate by my laws in my country.
I ain't saying nothing about the laws. I said the standard. I am not coming from America as an engineer and climbing up on a building without a harness. I mean, it's common sense.
This is what I'm telling you. anybody coming across to another country, because if somebody leaves Guyana, for example, and they go to Barbados, they would have to deal with Barbados, for example, the way they have their laws that are particularly geared for example, the construction sector. There are laws that deal specifically with that. In the US, there are laws that deal specifically with that. What I'm saying is that at one stage in time, those laws were non-existent in Guyana. And under this minister that is there now, he is making an active move to put those laws in place to ensure that workers have insurance, to ensure that all construction companies know that when people are on buildings, there are harnesses, there are certain safety equipment that they must have. Those are things that have been introduced now under his ministry, because under the previous ones, even under the same PPP ministers going back, they didn't have those ideas in play. They did not have those ideas in train. So Joe Hamilton, in my estimation, and then now that he has added the application format to it, where if you've got a complaint, you could literally do that online and send that information in. That is exactly what we need in Guyana to prevent, for example, people in the system that don't want to assist a complaint to happen, stymieing the process of that complaint. And I believe the police force should implement some of that very strategy. Because if they had an app and they had a dedicated group of individuals that are sitting there to take the complaints separately outside of the police force, I think we can get some action. That is what you need. Those are the kind of strategies you need to implement, where people, there is a redress somewhere where something happens and people can say, well, what are you gonna do? This is the thing with the mentality with people in Guyana. They always say, what are you gonna do? No, you don't say what you're gonna do. There's a lot you can do. You understand? There's a lot you can do. So you have to understand what you need to get done and get that done. So
I
when it
agree.
comes
I
to this,
agree.
yeah, with this upcoming elections and what's happening in terms of the talk about what needs to be done, what not needs to be done, what we need to do, and this is only in my opinion. One, I don't think we need a change of the guard, because I think Ali is putting his best foot forward. What I do believe we need is a competent opposition that understands economics. So when Ashni Singh goes to Parliament and delivers his budgets and stuff like that, you have competent individuals that understand how to follow the paper trail and to keep on the ball. So if they come out and they realize, okay, there's something that is wrong here, they can address that in Parliament, but not just come out on the road and tell their supporters, oh, it's big corruption and thieving. But where is the evidence? If I am a layman on the outside and I can see and I can identify and provide evidence to show corruption, then what happened to the people who are supposed to be the opposition representatives in Parliament? They can't see none. They cannot see anything legitimately to bring it to their constituents to say, this is what is going on, and they can raise it in the eyes of everybody, even in the media, and say, this is wrong because of these legal things. Nothing they can do.
Keep in mind, those are the same individuals as you mentioned before. And as I mentioned, from the incompetent side, eh? So if they haven't done anything in power, I don't expect them to do anything out of power. Hence, my move would be to rid the entire system, right? If I so this is why I believe, of course, the hierarchy existed, right? While the queen was queen, the queen was waving she hands this and Mary, right?
Mhm.
The king was making his move, the prince them was making their move, the ministers was the ones in charge.
Mhm.
So even in society today, what we do have that same system. It's just not the queen alone in charge, right? So I think we had this conversation in the background
Mm.
where you mentioned one party would have proposed a one governance, right? And I recently
Shared,
watched
shared,
a
shared
YouTube video.
governance. Shared governance.
Correct.
Hmm.
So I watched a video on how China operates, right? Now, I might be wrong if it still operates the same way, but they do have the shared governance aspect of things going on, whereby
Yeah.
there's a group of individuals, right, who would have been, if we were to use Guyana, Nigel, Norton, Ali, Jagdeo, and everybody else with the competence and the know-how, right, to have this country functioning the way it's supposed to, right? So let's look at the shared governance aspect. Have all the wannabe candidates who want to be one person in charge, have all of them in the top brass. So they coming up with the brilliant ideas, passing down to the members, which would be the members of parliament, right? From my knowledge, this is how China functions. They hand down now to the second level. They would decide, well, how we could implement these ideas in society. How could it
Hmm.
benefit the individuals, the people,
Hmm.
right? And then that now passed down to the various ministries of implementation of these concepts.
Well, I'll tell you what.
So,
I love that.
mm,
I love that. I love. A matter of fact, China does what you're talking about there, right? But just to interject, now in our system, we have a system where the politicians, when it comes to working together, it's a winner take all kind of system. And I gotta say this, and some people might be upset, but you gotta look at the reality of the situation. The PPP is the only one that is really suggesting the shared governance. I'll tell you how. If you notice, when they won the last elections, do you know that there are several people from the PNC that are working in the PPP as part of the government? I'll give you a perfect example. Carl Greenidge, who is one of the stalwarts from the PNC, the finance minister under Forbes Burnham, coming all the way up, is now working with Hugh Todd in the foreign ministry because of his expertise in that particular field. So the thing I like about the PPP is that they're not going to exclude you because you're not with them. If you have the skills and the know-how to get it done and they need you, they're gonna pull you. But on the opposite side, if they're in there, if they
for
have
the
it on
most part, most part,
they don't care, right? They don't care. You understand? And this is where we have mega issues where, for example, the idea of shared governance is not going to work because the PNC, obviously, with their type of behavior, going to believe that because we're sharing government, that means I could go ahead and do what I want to do without consultation. And the whole idea of shared governance is consultation before any action is made. And we could see clearly based on how they operate that they don't want to operate under any sort of we share ideas and discuss it before we put it out there. It's not like that. It's not
correct.
objective.
So this is why I like business also, right? Because in any business, you set up a cooperation. You
Hmm.
can't control it by yourself. You have your board, you need to have your managers, your supervisors, your regular employees, and everything else in between, right?
Hmm.
Now, CEO, CFO, COO, CSO, and everybody else in between that is on the top brass. And they
Hmm.
determine how the company is moving forward, right? Now, always keep in mind, it is the Cooperative Republic of Guyana. So, of course, I think a little bit weird, right? While we cannot sit down and fight on the opposition, right? Whoever that may be, or they may be, I really and truly think the government, right? However they want to put this as, the ruling party should, if you're proposing shared governance, as you say, you're grabbing people who is on board with the policies and the movement of forward thinking for the country and betterment. While you have to forget democracy in a sense to make that happen, forget the people who is not willing to make it happen. If Norton doesn't want to come to the table with his ideas, because word in the streets is Norton is a very brilliant man also. Right? I personally haven't seen any display of that. My experience of hearing about Norton from the time he came out is Bam Bam Alley. While I'm too young to understand the functions of Bam Bam Alley, right? That is all I know about Norton. When I look at Nigel, I could say, hey, this is a lawyer, runs business. The two works, he has some ideas. I could look at Simone Brooms and say, well, pretty much the same thing, business, ideas, who she stands for publicly, right? I still would want to, if I'm doing like a whole psychology breakdown, I want to sit down with all of these individuals, right? I think I understand Ali because he's able to display everything now, right? So I don't need much to sit down with him. But all the other individuals who's running for government, who's running for president, I need a psych. Is it called a psych analysis?
Evaluation. A psych evaluation.
Of what exactly is your concept of a president? Because in a company, that president could be walked over easy. Whether it be a hostile takeover by the board of directors, whether it be a coup d'etat, and anything else in between.
But the funny thing about Guyana's structure, though, and I'm glad you did mention Cooperative Republic of Guyana. This is why we need a referendum, right? Because one, we need to take that nonsensical word off the top there. Cooperative, right? This is not a company. This is a country of individuals, right? They might be thinking that that word means we all cooperate together based on the song that says
the hierarchy.
Go ahead.
No, but that came from the hierarchy aspect. Even if we take the cooperative, all other countries are businesses. America is the perfect example, and I think followed by Europe and everybody else in between. Are businesses.
Businesses. There is one country that is a business, and that's America. No other country is structured that way. No other country
is capitalist system.
With their capitalist system, no other country is structured that way.
No, but they're all follow pattern. Remember, so they all have
certain aspects to the capitalism, but America is the one that follows its own thing. Nobody is at that pinnacle like they, because they maximize everything for them is about capitalists. All right,
right.
Well, if that is what people want, that's what they want. Now, in countries like Guyana, where you have a very small population that was basically set up as an extractive state, because Guyana wasn't set up to be a country, it was just set up to be a key.
To be a business, brother. To be a business.
To be a key and field.
The sugar industry is a business, brother.
Right.
So we were set up to be the sugar industry for them, man, though.
But this is why I said we got to take off the cooperative republic, because we're not cooperating to make sugar for nobody.
So even if we become the republic, what exactly are we going to do? They stand won't change.
I'll show you the things that need to change. We need to take that off. We need to take out this nonsense about executive president, because that is what created the problem when Donald Ramotar could have prorogued parliament and run the place still, and that's what created a whole vibes, right? You remember all the opposition trouble, oh, you can't do that. But that was in the law. If the
I honestly
Kabaka
have
had done
no
that,
recollection.
if the Kabaka they do that, not a buy, they pick the teeth. Because it's right there. The executive president means, this is what I said before, and people know this about Guyana. The lawyers know this. The executive president means I could parole the parliament, I could send everybody home and run the place. That is what Forbes' idea was. Those are the stupid laws that need to come out, among a slew of other old common laws, things that need to change. If during the PPP and Barry Jagdeo did not change that two-term presidency, it would have remained, you could have stayed there as long as you want. Because that is how it was. This is why Forbes Burnham was able to stay in there for 28 years. Because the legal framework, that old English common law system that was basically set up for the slave masters to rule over the slave class, was not changed and adjusted for this modern environment that we're in. It was not. So we find ourselves in a dilemma in 2025 where we have oil companies coming in, we have billions of dollars coming in, we have infrastructure and all kinds of development
Trillions,
works that
brother, trillions.
happen.
Get it together.
Trillions, exactly, trillions. Sorry, my apologies. Right? But we can't catch ourselves because what? The basic structures, the legal frameworks, and all these things that were supposed to be put in place from the get-go are not in place. So we are in a position where we have to scramble to catch up. And that is what is creating a lot of the frustration in the society, and is creating and people thinking, okay, well, maybe we need a change. It's not a change you need. You need to change the system that is running, not necessarily the individuals that are running it presently. Because we know for a fact we ain't got no better individuals. Because I, for one, ain't putting back individuals who can tell me that they went to make a deal for our oil for 2%. All of them supposed to get slapped for doing that deal. And then coming back to tell us that, oh, is the PPP made a bad deal? No, the PPP made an exploration deal with CGX. And this is why I tell people reading is important. They made a deal with CGX. And this was way since under Janet Jagan time. That's an exploration deal. That's not a deal for pumping oil and revenues. That was done under APNU for that 2% royalties that they're now telling their supporters, oh, the PPP can change those contracts.
So I do believe the PPP could change the contract, right? By understanding business.
How?
Every contract have a clause. While I have seen some of the oil and gas sector contracts is some of the tightest, right?
This is why I asked the question.
But just so if, and I could be wrong, so individuals, we got a bunch of lawyers and everybody, y'all just be watching. Yeah, it's okay. Y'all could click on, we could see y'all watching already. You don't have to hide.
Mr. Todd, Mr. Boswick, Mr. Trotman, Mr. Hughes. There's lots of lawyers that know this. They know.
Good.
Yeah.
So, America won't put certain things in a contract if they can't swindle you right out. Remember, it's a capitalist system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So let's say we're being swindled out currently. We can't really benefit as Guyanese. This is where my problem comes in. Now you tell me all these damn lawyers and judges we have in this country, and they couldn't came up with the idea, let's put a clause in there to help ourselves?
But
even if you're being greedy, know what I said to
2%.
That is my problem, brother.
You're
telling me all the lawyers and judges in the country today couldn't come together and study Trinidad, study Africa, study every other country, Venezuela, and come up with better terms? So while I know contracts are sealed tight, super tight, right? As Lola said, pinching tight, right? It's impossible that you couldn't have consultations with brilliant minds. So I agree with you, right? But I also understand business to say, well, if I sign a contract that is specific in my drilling matters, now if I drill past our target agreement, an exploration and drilling agreement, you have the ability to force issue and conversations happening. We agreed to 10 billion barrels. Yesterday, we hit 11 billion barrels. Next week, we are scheduled to hit 25 billion barrels. Listen here, brother. You can't continue to suck me dry at 2% for the same agreement that we had last year or for last 5 years.
Unfortunately, although that argument is quite plausible, unfortunately for Guyana, because Guyana is not a world unto itself. It doesn't exist in a bubble, like in a universe by itself. It has to conform to international treaties and international laws. And international law says, this is not internal Guyanese contracts on land. That's an international contract because that's in the water. And that contract, once it is signed by our minister and signed off by our government, it is an international contract which is not changeable like that. If you go to change
like
that,
so
hold on, if you go to change that, you are then going to break the treaty, which will then throw your country into a state, because a lot of the investors will say, okay, well, we can't do business with you. The banking systems wouldn't do business with you because you're not honoring contracts. So it would be
what are we
defeating.
going to lose if we break that
I'll
contract?
tell you what we'll lose.
Are we going to lose, brother?
I'll tell you exactly what we lose. If we try to push an issue changing that contract with Exxon and they leave, we lose. Because not only are they going to pull out, but the banking system internationally is going to drive the interest rates for any loan that the Guyana has to take anything on through the roof. So this is not a game where people believe that, well, oh, we could run back and do this and we could run back and do that. As people thinking that Barrett Jagdeo and them have so much power that they can step into Exxon's affairs with a signed contract and say, listen, change this. It's impossible. And any politician, I challenge any politician to tell me that they could do that. Because I know that's a bundle of stupidness they're telling people. They could never go and change that contract after it's done. There is no clause that Exxon is going to offer you if they're giving you a contract that is going to give you favorable stats. It doesn't work that way.
Correct.
This is business we in.
In court, a case, a regular, let's put to the music business. A contract like that would have been tossed out over time. This is why the music business today is suffering. Because remember, it was built on some of the same aspect, where them record labels swindle you and your entire generation, especially when it comes to publishing, right?
Well, the thing about it, I don't like to don't use the word swindling, because you can't get swindled if you're educated.
We not educated. The Guyanese people is the educated bunch, brother. That is where I was getting.
But here was my thing. If you ain't educated, you can get swindled. You got take though.
Correct.
You got to take that. This is how the world is. The world is structured like this.
The big country also know, brother, we didn't know any better. You understand me?
We did not know any better. We did not know any better.
We still don't know any better.
Hold on. We didn't know any better, but we had people from Trinidad, Ghana, South Africa come to the government and said, don't sign anything until we review what is the offer, but they decided to send 2 people and go ahead and sign the 2%.
That is greed. That is greed.
Now,
So you hold them 2 people accountable.
when?
No, that is what's supposed to happen naturally.
Yeah, but it could
You
only
hold
happen.
them 2 people
It
accountable.
could only happen if there's a parliamentary sitting to deal with that issue and change the boundaries and the perimeters of the laws to deal with a minister and a parliamentarian who signed that very contract.
Hence
You understand?
my general problem. Because these people would have been there forever, right? I've seen the oldest people in parliament, brother. And
Bro,
I've said this before. I can't allow my grandmother for come and tell me how to live in 2025. It don't go together. It could never work.
I agree.
And
Because
we
the
have
oldest people
grandparents in parliament.
The oldest people in parliament, if you walk in parliament tomorrow, if they got to sit in, you will be shocked. Most of the people in the opposition is dinosaurs. They're relics.
Go inside, look at outreach the PNC had the other day. And everybody beard gray up. And I looking at how y'all making it down the block and wrong the car now. Because y'all dragging. Y'all not walking brisk with energy, exciting me to come out to me yard and shake y'all hand and hear what y'all gotta say.
We gotta be realistic with the thing. They threw a lot of their real strong youthful leaders to the wolf. One of them is James Bond. They throw James Bond to the wolf, left James Bond to fend for himself after years of his contribution to their party. Then when he decided, listen, I'm not going to waste my entire life. He getting green now too. He getting green now. And decide, well, here what happened. I need to work with a winning team at some point before I die. Because I've been working with the losers forever. So I decided, okay, I'm gonna make a switch. I'm gonna look at what the winners doing, and I'm gonna make my contribution to my country. And this is where I see a lot of people have decided, listen, I ain't worrying. All those people who used to be on the opposition side, they're like, listen, why are we even in this fight when it's all about contributing to your country, building your country? That's what it's about. It's not about every other country has government and opposition, but they're not interested in ripping down everything the last government do. And this is where our governments are extremely petty. Both sides are extremely petty. Now, APNU lost the elections. The PPP came in. The press conference with the VP. I have great respect for the VP. But y'all petty in certain cases. Y'all left the Durban Park to rotten. And that is part of the city's aesthetics, which should have been maintained. You don't leave it to rotten so that you have something to point at to say, oh, well, this is what the opposition did, you know. And that is basically using those things as politicking. And those are things I don't personally agree with. Because once it's the country's money that was spent to build anything, it should be maintained. If you got into power and you decided or you thought that that was a total waste of money, bring in the Auditor General and let us audit that thing. And if people had misappropriated funds, let them go to jail. Because all I hear the VP is talking about sometimes, oh, what happened to the 1 point whatever billion dollars missing from the Durban Park? But I don't hear where's the investigation and who's being held accountable. Where's that part?
Them thing not gonna happen, brother. If you look at the culture center, same way, everything sit down. Everything that's supposed to be catching your eyes, historic, if you want to say, has been sitting. You could really tell the history when you pass the culture center. They from my knowledge, I have never seen a beautiful culture center. The color have always been the same. The look has always been the same, besides a new statue thing with in front now. The design, everything have all been the same. I am pretty sure if you're in the walls, it's moldy and thing.
Bro,
right?
look, that was built way back to accommodate Carifesta. Right?
I mean, no
Way
problem, but update it. Update is necessary.
These are the things that that we propose and that we talk about on our radio show. Instead of, for example, you have, and I can't not make emphasis of this, you have a minister that I do believe that the government, if they're getting back into power, he should not be part of the next government, and that's Charles Ramsey. The whole issue of culture, youth, and sport, if they are to outline, if he can outline to me where are the development plans that have been executed by his ministry to affect the youth, to affect sports, and to affect culture, I stop calling in him. But I know for a fact nothing in culture. Because if you're dealing with culture, you know what you got to do. I'm not going to explain that to him, and he's a minister.
No, but he would tell you a barrage of things.
Like nothing.
I am telling you, he's going to tell you a barrage of things.
Like?
Could not make sense to you. One.
Obviously, it not going to make sense.
Secondly, right? There's going to be a lot of people out there that's going to support what he's saying. Because
keep in mind, I did say a lot of our people are not educated.
No, the ones that is getting the attention or got the attention because of what is given to them, right? Or what is being done for them, even though it might not be accepted by you or anyone looking in to say it should have been better. They would support it and support what he's saying. He's doing a good job. So that's where the point is, right? That's where the point is, that it would not be no development because there's so many odds against the few that's gonna say, boy, this guy gotta do better.
Well, I don't think there's anybody out there, even members of the same PPP have said that, listen, he's not doing a good job. He's definitely not doing a good job. Listen, BJ is a sensible guy. I worked with BJ before. And I know he's a sensible guy. And I know he listens to us when we talk on the radio. And we've said numerous times, it even was made a joke that Ramsey's supposed to get fired. That's not his job. They should have moved him over to natural resources.
It wasn't a joke. I was serious.
Yeah. We were serious, but we're talking about what joke was made on him, about him getting fired and removed from that position. We know about the joke.
I as a president or I as a leader of a party, dude, you ain't going back nowhere else, buddy. You going as a junior or somebody supporting somewhere.
For me, it's not even junior. It's not even junior.
Yeah, it's nothing, brother.
It's nothing.
Nothing culture.
That amount of failure for 4 to 5 years in one particular ministry, nah. Next person.
Which I look forward to seeing the next. Of course. That is going to be interesting in the creative community.
But let me outline this as well. Charles Ramson's failure in the Ministry of Culture is not totally his, right? It's also some of those minions who is the left from APNU that left in the ministry, in the culture ministry still. Because let me tell you what these people are doing. He's a PPP guy. They're APNU people. So when people are coming in to try to get certain things done with him, and they believe that you are not a supporter of them, they try to stymie or to make bad water between you. Oh, this one here is a this and that. We know how it works in Guyana. It's a set of susu behavior. This is why Ramson finds himself in a position where he is now. Because the actual people who can function and understand the industry that he's supposed to be creating is us. And the idiots who are in the Ministry of Culture telling him, oh, don't deal with them guys. They have no clue. And they're the ones who are guiding you wrong and guiding you to the point where it's time for you to go, get fired because you don't know what you're doing.
It's there. See, this is the problem again. It's everything comes off affiliations and also
it's all about politics, bro. It's not about anything else. That's all they do here.
You gotta recognize people that is professional and could do a job.
Exactly. Instead of stupidness these people be doing.
There's no resume.
It's not even politics. For me, it's incompetence. And I'm always no.
They're bringing politics into the workplace. That is bringing.
That is not politics, brother.
Hold on.
No, I could play politics. I've been studying, right?
If I'm not supporting the government or the opposition, and I'm going to get a service that's supposed to be issued to any individual that requires that service and they qualify, but I don't get that service because somebody in there has an issue because I don't support the party that they do. That's political.
You see, this is the problem, right? Where I get it. If you naturally employ a person off of their credentials and all these different things, it's an expectation when they come.
Not the credentials, the strength. Not for them credentials is fake. The strength.
No. But I'm telling you, off of the person that's coming in and give you a resume, years of experience, different things that you're looking for. And you hire that person. When a person comes in, there's an expectation that they have to meet, right? If the person is not functioning, say, okay, we got a 1 year probation. I realize that you're not competent enough. You're not good enough to what is on paper. And I could tell you, yo, we're going to relieve you, right? But at the same time, if you're bringing in affiliates, and you're bringing in people that supposed to be a part of whatever is going on politically, right? Now, he can call a bigger man than you and this body and that body because this man can't do me though, and I supposed to be, this is where he's supposed to be. I work hard for be here. You know what I mean? So it becomes a right instead of where you see, I could tell a man to hire, you could be fired. So these men is just there, but they're not, it's like you can't get fired because the affiliations.
No, let me tell you what exactly was happening.
So that's wrong.
When the government change happened, the reason why a lot of those people were not fired is because there was, if you notice, there was a big campaign that the PPP is coming in and firing black people from their job, legitimate jobs. So it became something political and then racist at the same time. So a lot of these individuals, and I know them, I could call their name. They're not qualified, to be in those positions that they're in. No. It's not frightened. It's not frightened. I know how to deal with them legally.
I don't.
I know they're not qualified, and I know these are the scopes.
Minister, bro, and I come in to a department.
Yeah, he come in, but he know who's
who. You can't tell me who I keeping and who I'm not keeping if I start going through the red card.
Well, here what in Guyana, you can't fire them.
No.
No?
Hey,
contract.
I could find ways
to fire them, Sherwin. It doesn't work so well.
I might not fire you,
brother.
Where I'm gonna place you, because I'm gonna start shuffling around. Where I'm gonna place you, it's not gonna be where you could do these things that is gonna cause things not to be the way it's supposed to go.
No, but you remember, you have to be somebody with good discernment and a good,
Yeah, because you gotta come in and you gotta realize.
because we obviously know. I'll show you what I'm talking about. If Charles Ramson had any measure of discernment, he would have known by now that whichever idiots was giving him advice about the industry or anything to do with the music and the creators, they have no idea. He needs to reach out to us who actually know what's going on. I called this
Yes.
man's secretary at least 5 times in a month to confirm a meeting. And I asked her, I said, didn't President Ali say that there's an open door policy with the ministers? She said, yes, but I cannot force the minister to have a meeting with you. I said, no, I know you can't force the minister to have a meeting with me. But because I am integral in the music and the creatives in Guyana, I think he should have a meeting with me. And I'm requesting one. So since this open door policy should be there, I should be able to access him. Just the same way he wants to be able to access the creatives when he wants to have an event, a One Guyana event, or he call in everybody to have a talk about what they're going to try to attempt to do and do absolute nonsense, like saying you're going to go and build studios and record artists for free, which it make no sense. Until now, after being confronted about these studios, you still can't bring the information on where the studio's location is in Region 10.
Well, I could tell you about the studios. The studios, from what I would have heard, it was built in a like back in the days when we had the toilet and bathroom.
The latrine,
So,
man.
but it's not just the latrine. Remember the bathroom there too, right? It says everything
Right.
together,
Yeah.
right?
Toilet and
That is
bath.
how I heard. I'm yet to go and visit. I've been meaning to go and take a
It's a
trip,
nice little
right? But that
outhouse,
is how,
man. It's an outhouse.
yeah.
Right.
I mean, imagine me having nice fancy toilet in 2025 and going back to record in a room in a pit.
In an outhouse. In an outhouse.
Incompetence, brother. I mean, so while I don't want to dwell on Ramson, we do have to gear the wheel for the next minister, right? And of course, in our variety, we like to put out solutions, right? Culture, the next culture minister, whoever you may be, take me stupid advice.
Take down our numbers.
No. Hold on, Malachi.
Call
Hold
for
on.
consultation.
No.
No
Don't
free,
do it
nothing
yet,
over here.
Malachi. No, don't do it yet, Malachi. Hold on. The next minister, male or female, take my stupid advice. Malachi, I met Malachi 2018 in person, right? And working the Malachi person have been pushing IPECUs for 20 years. I am not Malachi. Let me be clear. I am not Malachi. I do not have the time to run you down, right? I didn't press on Ramson because I wasn't in Guyana for the most part. And I do have my own to take care of. But again, the next minister coming in, and I do hope the vice president, the president, and everybody is listening in the culture ministry. I will spend my entire life, more than 20 years, and I ain't gonna take so long, to empty your nest. You will never want to have a nick off again. Because I'm pretty sure the trans coming in and Ramson transition going out, he's going to inform you not to mess with them too, man.
Bro, I can say this straight up, as plain as it is. If I ever catch the government or any politician boy using any content that I own, it's not going to be nice. And the judicial system in Guyana, when I go to them and I said, I have my intellectual property has been infringed on, and they don't give me satisfaction, I'm not the type of guy you can say, okay, well, I gotta listen to the court and stuff like that. Honestly, anytime my intellectual right is or my intellectual property is violated by a Guyanese that I can actually see, they're getting it. Like they're really gonna get it. They have to run to the police.
Brother,
And I'm serious
even
about
the
this.
police not
My
that.
intellectual property is mine. There is nobody but God could come down and tell me I should share it or somebody else has a right to it outside of me.
Hmm.
So for me, I just looking on at them and I'm like, okay, y'all can have y'all fun. But I was eager to hear when Ramson was talking about the database and stuff like that. Because I know if you're gonna have a database is of Guyanese music. There is no culture minister that own any of that music. However, there are producers, managers, and other people who own music. So if you're going to create a database, you have to have permission from all these people. So I found his statement very well, not his statement, but one of his mouthpieces statement very nonsensical. Ruel Johnson, who said, "Oh, so there are people who are not expendable in this."
So
I
this is
think
where we have to give solutions, brother. If the next minister is coming in, because I only know of 2 persons, 3 persons in the culture ministry today, right? I don't know everybody. I would like to do an analysis, an audit, as some would call it, of the individuals in the department, right? The next minister coming in, don't try it. I would make sure you regret coming into office, into that culture position, and doing stupidness. I will make it my life's work.
they
If they
don't
gotta do
understand.
documentary and write books about me and you relationship, they will have to do that. Which my children would then be able to make money off of. You see how it works? So if me and your relationship, because I ain't coming in for politics. So unless I'm going to be president, prime minister, vice president, or minister in my respective areas, I don't want to take part in politics. Because politics for me, when I see stupidness like this happening, I have the urge to change it. And because I cannot change it, I have a problem with it. And because the
Yep.
persons in charge of these parties and parliament in general
They can't
don't
see the
want
vision.
to change it.
They don't
Not
want to
the
change it.
vision. They don't want to change it. We will have a problem.
And one of the reasons, Martin, and we got to say this, we got to repeat it to those people who are uneducated about this particular issue. The reason the government of Guyana does not wish to engage the IP law issue seriously is because it's going to close down a majority of the businesses and those businesses that are their supporters.
Of course.
It's as simple
But
as that.
so this is why I like. So I met the vice president at a super young age. I think I was in primary school at the Arthur Chung Center, right? The me story goes, we were at a conference on a lunch break, and I look at the vice president that time, and we was trying to eat some food, and a big leg of chicken. You know, the serving nice when you're doing conference and thing, right? So I see everybody fighting with a plastic fork spoon thing, trying to dig in and eat their food.
Strong.
And I see he wasn't vice president. I can't remember what position he was then,
Probably was
right? But
Minister of Finance or Junior Minister of Finance.
probably. But I look at this man, and the man take his hand and say, oh, and eat the chicken. And I said, Jack, you're the big Jack, you're eating like that. So I drop me little spoon thing and I mix it too. Because now I'm looking at, well, we all dress nice and professional. Well, I got my uniform then, right? But everybody is professional in this professional setting, and we're expected to act in a certain manner whereby we wasn't being facilitated because the plastic fork couldn't pick up the meat, and there's the fact, even to today. You can't eat properly with a plastic spoon and a plastic fork. This is why I eat with a metal. Quite wrong in some cases, right? So when I see he did that, I said, this man, he appealed to me, right? years after when he was running for president, he was literally calling individuals' phone and asking, hey, are you coming out to vote? Are you supporting me? I remember he called my sister phone. She had just turned 18, right? And we were excited. Now, then again, that's my second experience. Now, this is a man of the earth. He's down to earth. He's rooted. He ain't highty-tighty as you see some, oh, you can't talk to them and this thing. I've seen the same traits in the president today. You're able to meet these people on the ground, shake the hand, ask, which guy is like, beg, ask for something, and these men would make sure, hey, if they have the capacity to fulfill that. So when I look at leaders, these are some of the things I'm looking at. Because if I'm to lead a group of people, even in my business, I want to be able to be the person that an employee could come to with any problem. And as long as I'm in the capacity to assess and assist, then I do so.
Yeah.
So any ministers coming in, anybody running for office should have some traits. And as Guyanese, these are some of the basic things you have to look at.
Well, basics is not something like the basic knowledge or the basic understanding of the running of certain systems is something that I think that both parties have to look at. And even those parties now who are saying that they wanna be involved in the elections coming up, I don't know what sense that's going to make if you have, for example, the leaders of many of the smaller parties going over to the PPP, as well as members from the major opposition going over to the PPP. I don't know how, in their calculation in terms of seats and winning, they have in mind.
You looking at it like that. Hold on, just to cut you. I looking at it as some of the leaders for the smaller parties or who wants to be president are criminals. Now you're telling me I must look at a man who willing to eat, or men who are willing to eat with their hand and cook as Ali like cookie, he cook up and he Korean thing. So I must look at that and say, oh, this is not a good man. This is not a good leader. Compared to a criminal and say, oh, I'm running behind this. I'm supporting this. I mean, I'm not the smartest in the bunch, but I'm also not at baby Skello's level, right?
I told you, man. Listen,
as Guyanese.
I can tell you this, though. I can tell you this. For me, it's like this. I know what Sherwin is talking about because in our conversations, we know for a fact, and I would say this in public as well. I do believe that any leader that stays in a position for too long is then corrupted. Anytime, any period of time after 10 years to me is like really too long. They get corrupted. They start to think of all kinds of different little quirks start coming in, and they start just not being what the intention was from the beginning. All right, it starts to get twisted. That I do believe in. But the situation we are in Guyana presently is where we are basically, stuck between a rock and a cliff. The rock is the ruling party presently with its incompetent, it got some really incompetent ministers, which include Ramson. On the other side of that is a cliff, which represents the opposition. Because if you turn to them for anything, you're going to fall. That's all that's going to happen. You're going to fall. So you stuck between, you got brace with this rock here and hold on to this rock before you fall. Because the opposition is just a cliff to nothing, a precipice to absolutely nothing. Because if you got 3 months to elections and we ain't here, all we hearing is we must come together as the opposition because when we depose the PPP, we want to do this, and none of the policies are new. All of them are basic copies of what is there. Oh, we can turn the 100,000 into 400,000, or if we get in someone, if we get arrangement with Exxon, promises again. If we make a change on the contract, we can give everybody $1 million, which we know is absolute bilge.
So
My question, this is my last question I want to ask, man. Listen, do you guys think that Guyana needs, I understand what is on the table right now might not be what should be. But my question on a neutral way, do you guys think Guyana needs a change? It needs better governance from better leaders.
It needs stronger governance. It needs stronger governance. People who have ethics, code of ethics, people who have morals, people who have integrity. Those are the standing pillars to hold up any democracy. The reason democracies fail is because once those pillars are removed, it can fall. Or what our idea of democracy is, it will fall.
And along the way, right, what we have now, I would say, like I would say there is people that is there, but they were there too long, so they become not so relevant to be in that position anymore. We need people that's refreshed, more, or we need, or I should say, a couple that
you see, Sherwin, I totally agree with you. And in the case of Guyana, they have people who have the intellect just as good,
yeah,
but you know what they can't deal with? They cannot deal with the demagoguery that happens in Guyana because technocrats deal with, for example, when the PPP got into government in 1992, one of the things that they had to do, you notice in 1992, it was the PPP slash C. It was the PPP, the party, and the C was the civic component. Those were the people who were just normal individuals who were technocrats, people with their high, were highly qualified. They decided, okay, we need a component of these individuals in the party. Because outside of having just the political know-how, politics don't run no nation. Politics does not run a nation. So you need those technocrats who have the skills in business, in commerce, and that kind of stuff, in trade, in financing. Those are the people you need on board. Now, when you look at the PPP, you see that they try to bring those individuals in the fold. When you look at the opposition, you wondering, is all politicians? You have no technocrats over there. Where are your technocrats? Your technocrats left and went over to the PPP. And I pointed out one of them. Carl Greenidge is one. And he is one of their most experienced technocrats. And this is because, again, technocrats fail to hang on to this notion and always have demagoguery in everything that they do. Because the demagoguery is what is holding Guyana back. It can't develop if every single thing or every single issue is politicized. Somebody get knocked down. Is the government make that happen? A horse dead. The government make that happen. Rainfall too much. It flood. The government made that happen. And people actually put these things up as posts and say the government make that happen.
Hold on. So this is where you have to always analyze stuff. It is the government make it happen. Because I went in town the other day,
right,
and I had to hop over, which I believe is sewage water. I am. So that's the same car that's going down to the library, right?
Avenue of the Republic.
Good. So Avenue of the
Right.
Republic. Now, when
Yes.
you passing down there, I mean, look at the condition of the place. So
Right.
it is important to remember.
And this goes back to the government, right?
Correct. The government of the system, right?
The government
Is in charge of enforcing,
right.
right? So this is why people always jump back to the government. What I would like to encourage people is to remember the government is not just the PPP, but it's also the opposition. So when you're blaming government, you have to be very specific. This is why if I do decide to make a post, and when I do, I tag individuals who is in charge of these specific positions, right? And even when I'm speaking, as we know, the city council is in charge of their portfolio, but the government also have control over city council. You can't tell me it's wholesale independent. That is telling me the same thing. The contract can't change. It just don't make sense. Altogether,
But again,
it don't make sense. And if you
some-
can't change it as an individual or somebody in power, then you have no place being in power.
well, when it comes to city, when it comes to that area you were talking about, and I'm glad that you mentioned Georgetown, because I wanted to mention something about the city and the flooding. Now, one of the things that came out in the news, and we read it on our show, is that the mayor of Georgetown says he has no way of collecting revenues from the people that have to pay City Hall the revenues. Well, straight off the bat, if you can't get it done, Mr. Mentor, you got to go.
Step up.
Because I've never heard of a mayor being that defeating of themselves. You understand? That's the first defeat. You can't be the mayor and then telling the people you can't get the business people to pay you the taxes so you could get the garbage cleanup. And I'm sorry. That is not the excuse you should be using.
Exactly. And that is my personal problem, right? Whereby I could come up with an idea or a few ideas of how to clean up the city, but I don't have the position. So when I look at politics, I am thinking, well, my background is media, right? Naturally, my background is media and hospitality. And then security. So if I'm looking at my three main areas, so I'm thinking, well, I still don't have the power with any of these positions that I have as a regular Guyanese. So I'm looking and say, well, hey, politics might actually be my career. You understand? Because if you can do it and you in politics, and me having the Guyanese birth certificate and passport and ID card gives me privilege to take up that mantle from you. In some case, it might be by force. And this is me being truthful, right? Because we might have to stand up in front of the mayor's place for an entire month and demand you to come out. And we've seen how that would have played out in other countries. Of course, I don't want to be an individual like that, right? But I do have the capabilities of educating individuals and encouraging, as we see with the influencers of Guyana, how they are able to influence people to go out by the square of the revolution and box out.
And
I'm pretty sure. Correct. So I'm pretty sure if I make it my duty and say, well, hey, I want to be mayor of Georgetown, then I will make sure, knowing who I am, you're out of that position and I am in. Right?
You know,
and that is solely to show you, hold on, that is to show you the capabilities of collecting your taxes. So this is why I said before, don't let the next minister of culture come and do stupidness, because I have invested interest in certain areas: security, hospitality, and entertainment, right? So in these three areas, me and these ministers or individuals in this position have a personal issue. As Ramson would say, we make it personal. Yes, because I have children in Guyana and out of Guyana
No,
who
but
wants to live here, and you
for
will
years,
make their future bad.
for years, it was not personal. It was an attempt to try to get to his ears so he can probably understand the real perspective on what his job as the culture minister should be. But apparently, because of his genius, he doesn't feel that anybody should be able to give him some advice, guide him in a manner that would allow Guyana's growth overall. Because I don't see one of the things that's surprising to me, and like I look at Guyanese people and I'm like amazed. Dave Martins will die as one of our stalwarts in the music business. Charles Ramson would be one of the persons holding up this man's casket. And his ministry really did absolutely zero to actually deal with the creative industries. But he turned up at Dave Martin's funeral. Why? Because he know the family. The hypocrisy is too much. It's just way too much.
Telling you.
And
And
BJ, but I really trust me. I know quite a few people from in that party, and my insistence is this idiot gots to go. He's
well,
not
the government
qualified to
about to
be
come to an end. So I do believe I do believe he's going. And just to clarify, right? Because people might hear me say, "Oh, we make it personal." It was only made
it
personal.
is personal now.
No, no, but hold on, we gotta let him know
No, it's
why, right? It's
you know why
important.
it's personal now? You know why it's personal now? Because we applied for a grant. They didn't approve the grant. They gave it to Richard Behini. I want the minister and I want Ruel Johnson to come out and explain to the Guyanese public why the so-called database that the minister and Ruel said supposed to finish and launch at the end of 2024 is 2025. It didn't come out yet, but you gave the grant 2022. So 3 years after, no deliverables still.
So for me, that is one component that made it personal. The real reason why I made it personal, or I collected that aspect whereby he claimed we made it personal by attacking him, is because after coming out and criticizing the things that you're doing, I didn't do it in the first year. I'm pretty sure I started, but in the second year, coming out, slowly,
We're
slowly.
talking about personal attacks. If I really wanted to
No,
attack this
but
person,
no, but no, hold on. We can
talk
get
about
there,
the
but
affiliation with them banners in Buxton and
no,
them.
man,
This is what we talk about.
personal, because when we speak out, we got death threats, and a lot of people don't know this,
No, they don't know that.
right? And as you mentioned, the Buxton people,
I
we
don't take
got
look.
death threats, so y'all could believe where the death threats coming from,
Hmm.
or y'all could choose based on who Ramson moves around with, his close ties of people.
Yeah.
When they would jump in your inbox and send you a message or a voice note and
Man,
demanding
I I,
that
I,
you do this,
I don't
that,
like
and the third,
when I talking just like you
it
said
became
earlier.
personal.
Like when you said earlier, call name. I like to call names.
No,
What's
no,
his
we
name
ain't call
again that
him.
used to work
No,
at
no,
Locridy that called
no,
me
no.
to
We
get
ain't gonna do that.
foolish?
No, we
You
ain't gonna do
understand?
that. The-
We're not gonna
I
do it tonight, but I
no, no,
got
no.
you.
We ain't gonna do that ever, because I do understand. And so my second thing why it became personal is when I decide I coming back to Guyana and live. So I will not encourage incompetence to dwell and flourish in my existence. And when people are going to threaten my existence, we're going to have a problem. right?
Well,
Because none of them is God.
I already got a threat. Um, I can handle the threat, which a lot of people know I can handle the threat, but I would just not worry with it because the person really is not anybody for me.
Correct. So
But
this is why we want to take it legal and
yeah, that's what I'm saying.
enforce,
Legally,
right?
legally.
This is why we had that route, and a lot of people don't understand. They see, oh, Malachi and Martin always bashing in the minister. No, we ain't bashing the minister. It was never that. It is still never that. I don't care about the minister. I care about the policies that the minister is placed to enforce.
You see, a lot of people believe in Guyana. Guyanese believe in friending up politicians. This is the thing with Guyanese, right? We have a culture in Guyana that is all about, and it was put in there by Forbes, where you gotta look up to the politician them like if them is God. No, they're not. All
Well,
they
we
are
also know
servant
Forbes'
sons.
problem. So
Yeah,
while
yeah.
people put him on a pedestal,
Nah,
with
well,
my understanding of his
we-
operation, I can't even look up to an individual like that. Like I said, I can't even look to my grandmother for certain guidance because our times would have changed so drastically
yeah, yeah,
that
yeah. Some
what
people
she
think
can
that
tell me not gonna apply for today, brother.
no, no, it's not applicable. A lot of the things, and this is where I think the opposition party stuck because when, like you rightfully says, you look at their meetings or whatever thing they have is bare old people, all them old. What impact and change that bunch of old people gonna do?
But
What is the future that they see for Guyana when they
me,
knocking? According to the truth, they knocking on heaven's door. They're knocking on heaven's door, but they see the future. The only future they seeing is down that white tunnel, the light at the end. This is the future they're seeing.
of course, being who we are, they could have, and even the PvP party, I do hope that y'all take things and implement it because y'all got some old people on y'all side too, right?
Oh
While I
well,
don't think certain people belong in total in the party or in parliament more so,
yeah.
we do need to see young people with the energy to
And
push and enforce certain things. And
and
y'all could stand right there and give with the strength.
don't
You
let me
understand
left
me?
out President Ali because I haven't forgotten President Ali's words. Open door policy, President. However, when I met you in New York and I asked you the question regarding the IP law issue, you said to me, "Oh, get in contact with Nancy or your secretary," which I did. You asked, she asked me to email information to your office, which I did. Apparently, it is another play out, just like how Apno did. Like when Rueli called me in and asked me, let's work on something to submit to the government on the Rupert Rupner back then. And of course, this is one, I have no respect for these people who were all involved in a party with my uncle, and he ended up getting his death due to them. So I have absolutely no respect for people like Rupert Rupner, people like David Hines, these people in the opposition who running around talking a set of stupidness. The first thing they have to answer to is what happened to my uncle? What happened to Walter Rodney? That's what they gotta answer.
I
Then they
think
could
they
come to the
also
public and talk any other thing. But those people have no credibility whatsoever. Now, what I'm saying, people like Ruel and them, after we went to write this paper on to deliver to the government, it seems as though this is another repeat because you were right there in New York when we asked the president about this very issue about the IP issue. He said to us, get in contact with his secretary. We did. We submitted information. And like till now,
this
no
this is
response.
what I'm telling you, brother. I am not you. So everybody know or they would know your background, but nobody knows mine, right? And I've realized this over time. So I am the diary. If you ask me who I am, I'm a man of God. I'm the son of Solomon, of course. And if you know how Solomon bloodline flows. But if we're looking into modern times, I am a descendant of Earl Barrow. As if you do Barbados history, right, you would understand my blood boiling for politics is not just an ordinary boil. It is a boil for change that Mohammeds can bring. I do have some faith in Nigel, but he can't do it alone. Right? Norton, I have no faith in because I have seen nothing over time. I can't say anything about Simona Brooms because there's nothing that I know that is effective to the capacity that I could say my young girls, my children could look up to her as an individual and say, yes, this is who I want to be like. And I ain't coming for nobody, but from what I've seen in online, reading, because I do read, I study. Everything I going up against, I study. Right? So when I look at individuals, Darwin Best coming out, besides the housing sector, and I could say the housing aspect because he lived in America, he understands the system, and to understand the American system, especially in housing, means you have to become a manipulator. You have to understand that system. And from the time you did at 18, as you said, that is a very brilliant young age to soak up all of that knowledge. Which, so if I'm looking to, because I do believe now in the shared governance, right? I personally can now look at one party and say, oh, yeah, I'll take all the, oh, that's wasting me time as an individual.
But,
you understand me?
But on I mean, I kind of see a lot of your points on what you're saying, Martin. But you know the time running out, and I really wanted to touch in on one more issue before we go too far, which was when you mentioned Mohammeds, I said, oh yes, I was to deal with this particular issue as well. Not with the Mohammeds, not with the Mohammeds. I think the US and the sanctions are already dealing with them. But I want to deal a little bit with what's going on with Miss May Thomas, right? Because we see him, the media in Guyana is a weird mechanism going on. So Mohammed gets sanctioned, May Thomas gets sanctioned, but all of the focus is on Mohammed. So let's put a bit of focus on Miss Thomas. What is happening with this lady in particular?
Well, as the oil pump out,
if she is sanctioned as well, how come she ain't going through the prosecution? Why Soku in arrest this lady?
She's not going up for presidential candidate naturally, so she's not going to reach the level that Mohammed is reaching.
Soku, the Guyana police force,
brother.
Right?
Them people again, brother.
With this lady is condignly.
We can't depend security man, right? Depend on Ben. So
she was part of the run-ins.
Push that east, you brother.
It had to be that she was part of the run-ins because she gets sanctioned.
Clearly. Right? But if we're gonna, and this is where it comes back to changing of the laws, we're not gonna see anybody being held accountable in the rightful capacity that we would imagine.
But
because elections rigging, people still walking wrong, brother.
Yeah, I know.
So you think one, two body sanction? We have to change laws to enforce. Our thing for Guyana is enforcement. The police is not gonna come out and investigate May Thomas. They're not. Which one of them? It has to be somebody with a vendetta to come in and say,
No,
Me, you
but
had a
what I'm
problem,
saying,
and I can open the case.
but what I'm saying though, she was sanctioned. The Mohammeds were sanctioned. Information was given from the Americans to the Guyanese police force and to Soko. If a move is and a move has already been made, for example, Demon and all of them face went up as being sanctioned. Other things are gonna come down in the pipeline, as we know sanctions sooner or later. You can't do business with the banks. All of that is gonna come down. Is May Thomas doing business with the banks and all of that in Guyana? And why we
I'm
don't
not
have
sure.
details on her issue?
Because
Why isn't she
she's
arrested
still
by Soku? Why isn't she
nobody have been
arrested?
arrested.
Well, here what
Nobody
happened.
have been arrested.
Well, this
She
is the
keep in
lapse.
mind. No, hold on. This is why I said the policies and thing got changed. Because in Guyana we have an enforcement issue, right? We got some of the laws that's needed, but nobody's willing to enforce it. More so, the government, which is both sides, guys, is not willing to come together and say, hey, this person or these individuals should be held accountable. And not just for transparency's sake, but
Mhm.
because they're criminals.
But
Now,
let me
if
tell you
I'm
one
to do
thing.
an investigation,
You and
these
I both
people
know.
committed treason, brother.
You and I both know. Both sides have their den of thieves. And what is happening is
Exactly.
that when this side they in and you catch the thief, you can't do anything because remember thief ain't like see thief with long bag. So you can't do the thief nothing because you're a thief too. And the thief know that you stole. So this is the only reason for
So,
me why they cannot put these people behind bars.
well, that is why we're not going to see any type of investigation happening. Because if we could still have the riggers, the election riggers, still outside today, still living,
Yeah, still
still
outside. I mean,
dwelling, still in power,
and then the
I
thing
mean,
is,
come on.
the appealing cases, you rig and you they appealing the case that you rigged. You attempted to rig the elections and get it overturned. And you're still trying to pursue that, no, you did the right thing. This is the kind of foolishness that you really have to look at both parties and say, here, the PPP or the PNC cannot tell the Guyanese public, you telling us with all the 10 years, none of y'all stole a thing. Y'all didn't pick up a $20 that wasn't yours. When we saw clearly one minister of finance declare at one point in time, he thought that the $18 million signing bonus was a gift to him from Exxon. This is the level of
Find,
mentality of people we got to deal with.
find us fee.
He get a fee for signing on behalf, not he oil well, not he oil, Guyana's oil. But he believed that the check that come in is for he. No,
I'm telling
bro,
you, brother.
these kind of ignorant stupidness the Guyanese be tolerating from our politicians is too much.
So I
Honestly,
think
goodness.
that answers Sherwin last question, which is yes, we need a change. And I am 30 years old. I got about 50, right? So it's 20 35.
Mm.
2035. Me ain't gonna allow the same show to fest though. Because me ain't coming back home with me children and me family and encourage the same nonsense. Some of these people might not even be alive, to be honest.
Hopefully,
Because nature
hopefully.
can take them.
Honestly, I pray to the Most High that the wind, some wind pass you and carry a few, because they're just wasting time.
So
Honestly, I
let,
just wish
let
they could
nature
just
deal
like
with
carry
its
a couple of
course.
them, man.
But 2035, me sitting, I'm gonna allow this would be my first year voting ever. So I'm gonna make sure my vote counts.
Trust me, I'm
And
gonna make
I
sure
could
mine come.
guarantee you it's not going to happen. It's not going to continue happen. I can't continue to live in the same system that don't see any need to update. You understand? It's like I have a gate and me gate broke down. And you know, back in the days, you used to tie it up with an old cloth or rubber or whatever. But you build a nice fence, but you're still tying up your gate. Ain't making sense.
Well, I just
And I
want
am
them
not
to.
allowing gatekeepers as Guyanese. If I have to become a liar, trust me, I gonna become a liar. If I have to become the president, trust me, I will become the president. And for that same reason is why we gonna see change, because I will not sit and allow things to continue happening like this.
Well, this is my take on it. The PPP gotta stop shielding a lot of these people who are degenerates. They got to go. The incompetent people, they got to go. And I think this is why Barrett and Ali kind of reaching across the aisle, bring a few smart people from the opposition like James Bond over. Because they definitely need to get rid of people like Ramson. No make it. Need to bring over somebody who actually wants to do a job and really understands that they have to do it in a certain way. The the promises about like what Ali made the other day, which was a change in rhetoric. I hope people paid attention. He said for the next 10 years, he's going to be more people-centered, focusing on the people's development. The only way you're going to be focusing on the people's
Which I
development,
welcome.
I welcome it. But the only way I see that as part of the development strategy is if I see that in your manifesto and it has to say IP. If you're not dealing with updating the IP laws of Guyana and getting Guyana fully on board with that regime internationally, we're wasting time, because that deals with the same agriculture that you're talking about. That deals with the same pharmaceuticals you're talking about. That deals with the music. That deals with the tourism. That deals with every single sector.
So much illegal stuff happening in Guyana, brother. Even the registration of copyright. Do you
Stop
understand how
illegal.
illegal is that?
I'm telling you, we gotta get patents from the UK, and we are supposed to be an independent nation. But we can't get we
I
patents and trademark in Guyana. We gotta get an agent who gonna do it through England.
I look forward to seeing the new cabinet. Right? Whatever you say, the president doesn't have veto power anymore.
Doesn't have.
He doesn't have the thing that was in before that you mentioned, the full
No,
power to overthrow.
every president has 2 terms, and they can't reverse that. That's in the
No,
parliament. That's in our
no, not that part.
constitution.
The part where he could be the executive.
That
You said that doesn't
needs,
exist.
that needs to be removed. No, that needs to be removed. That
No, well,
executive
so hold on.
presidency
No, but don't
needs
take
to
it
go.
away yet.
Yeah,
No,
it needs to
while
go.
it needs to go. No, hold on. Since it's there, they're not gonna change it because they like the power, right? But since
This,
it's there, let's make use of it. Because if the opposition is not doing anything or doesn't want to come, because most of the parliamentary city opposition, and it's
just walk out.
usually after they're done, eat full their belly, sit down for 2 minutes for sure that they was there, they get up and gone.
They get up and gone.
So
Yeah.
if that is gonna continue happening, by all means, and this is why I say we can't, because if you take away the power from the president, the executive power, then who we waiting on for come to the table and make a change?
Martin, from the time Ali go to Parogue Parliament, it can be chaos in Georgetown. You know that.
We need some chaos. We probably do need some chaos for change. You
Because
realize Guyanese don't come together unless something chaotic is happening.
you mean looting, burning, and stealing.
The rest of the world are already taking part of it. Have you realized that Africa is at war? China is at war. Russia, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine,
they're all in
America,
conflicts for different
UK.
reasons. Guyana has absolutely no reason for conflict.
Change. Change just doesn't come just so easy. We haven't seen it in my 30 years. You haven't seen it in years.
Well,
And
yeah,
it's
I
not going
saw
to come
change.
just so easy.
I saw change because you remember in my case, I had to leave Guyana because the same opposition party that is in the opposition now are the ones responsible for killing my uncle. So yeah, we had to leave then. And when I came back in 1992, when the election happened and the PPP took over, then is when some change happened. Because before that, there was no change. It was Burnham and Hyde, strictly. That was it. Rice flour and something pop. That was it.
Carmel.
Not Carmel. Carmel was a with ustada kind of Guyanese. It's rice flour and flour mara or flour pop or whatever they call it. You
The
understand?
rice, man. The water from the rice.
Bro. I mean, like I was saying on radio today. In some areas, I do understand, and I do. I could see where isolating Guyana at a certain time would have been beneficial, but it didn't foster a culture when you isolate them and then force them into plagiarism. It didn't foster a development of anything unique. You remember when you're isolated, it affords you the ability to come up with something that is totally unique and totally yours. But in Guyana's case, it didn't happen that way. It forced
We
what they
just
did.
stuck
It
there.
just forced the individuals to pirate. That was it. Because you had individuals who were responsible, and this is something that I think the older folks need to come out and talk and stop going to the grave with this information, and being part of the deceit that is happening with the country and the misleading of the country, where they know for a fact people went and rewrote other people's songs and claim it was a Guyanese song. And we know, and we pointed out on several occasions, them songs like This Land Is My Land is not no Guyanese songs. Those songs belong to American writers. So we really have to understand that, listen, this thing that we do as Guyanese, it doesn't work. It's not something that flies for the rest of the world. And people just look at us and say, listen, this thing that you guys are doing is not good. And our progress is being stymied because of how we project ourselves to the rest of the world.
Mm.
But
Well,
of course,
as
we go ahead, Martin.
now as we're about to wrap up,
Yeah.
right? I do want to make sure I encourage the young minds because I'm fairly young, right? So look at certain things because I know there's individuals like me who ain't going for stupidness, and there's at least 100 of us. So when you're going out and vote, just like I would be, make sure you're using your common sense. Because I
And it's
think
not about
between scale,
race. And it's not
correct.
because,
So
they black, I black, so I vote for them.
I
Or the
think me
other
and
way
Baby
around.
Scallows, if we're not about the same age, is close. And I did mention while he's slow, he's not all that stupid. You understand me? If an individual could come out and tell you he wants certain things and they know changes need to happen, because this is what Guyanese been calling for, especially the younger generation, hence the run behind the Mohammeds. But know who you're running behind and what you're running behind.
And then far.
Because criminality is criminality regardless. A thief is a thief.
Thief.
Murderer is a murderer. Tax
Simple.
evasion is tax evasion. You can't
And,
change it.
and the thing about it that's funny, I'm glad you said that. Guyanese love to incorporate God into
God
everything.
had nothing to do with that.
So that's what I'm saying. I'm hoping while they're talking about God, they remember that God don't like thief and God
I
don't like lies.
I am a born Muslim, and if we're to look at the religion, so they are the extremists unless you are claiming to be an extremist. I understand, but don't pretend to be a good Muslim. All right?
And doing certain things, nah. Mm-mm.
All right then.
Mm-mm.
So I think that's my 2 cents. Young individuals, pay attention. You gotta be a
Yep.
little more wise. The Dunstog and the scrape head community is not very something that you should want to be a part of. And I know even the scrape heads, as they now they said they're sophisticated scrape heads, it proves that you're not all of that dumb.
They add on a word though. Sophisticated. They add a word to the scripts. Interesting. That's
So
interesting.
act accordingly. We need change, yes, but let's go for a positive change. Let's go for a forward thinking change. While I know
Yeah.
the PvP still have a couple kinks in the thing to fix,
Yeah.
come
They
out
got
and
couple kings.
demand.
Listen, they got couple kings. They got fire some of these incompetent ministers that they
Well,
have in there
them is
that
the
have
kings.
not
No,
been
them is the
delivering
king.
to the people. They
No, but
need to
even
look
the
at the issue.
ministers, we don't know who's the new set of people coming in. If there's a new set, so we have to demand now,
No,
within
but
now
that's what I'm
and
saying.
September,
Well, I demanding
what
no.
we want.
I demanding no that they fire some of these ministers who ain't know their head from their foot. They needs to go. They do not need to be on
Mhm.
the ballot because if I see, for example, and I'm making this clear, BJ, if I see Ramson on the ballot, it's gonna be trouble. I will lobby against you.
Keep in mind the keyword is lobby, which
I'm
a lot of
serious
Guyanese
about
doesn't
this like
understand.
a heart attack, bro. If he put the Kangalang back on the ticket, who's supposed to be a minister, that don't do anything as a minister, nah, I ain't lobbying with them. I'm not gonna be
Well,
lobbying with the government.
I know for sure, Home Affairs Minister Ben is not gonna be back there. I think he's a little bit too old to be sitting back there. So I don't even have to say much about that. Especially
Man,
in, I
listen,
look forward to seeing a younger, vibrant, a little bit
ropes.
more forward thinking individual when
We
it
all
comes to
know,
security.
listen, we all know ropes and Ben just got that position because of politics. That's not because of a brain.
We need brains, not
We need
politics.
brain is the same thing I
So
said about Ramson. Fire these
Jack
people who
Dio,
ain't got no brains.
who I believe Jack Dio have the brain to run the country, use that.
No, no, he
So
has the
I think
brain for economics. He don't
correct.
have the
So
brain for this field that I'm in and you're in. Why you don't
correct.
put his
So
brain
so
over
this
here?
is me thing, right? So I was told when election is called, I might use in the wrong terms, but during the process, I'm not sure how long that takes either. The government comes to an end, right?
Mhm.
And they're waiting to vote in the new president. I'm not sure if there's a week, a day, a month, whatever the case may be, or if it's now from the time it was announced, right? But yeah, I couldn't
No,
like me
it's not from now. It's I think it's like a few days just before the elections. Everything
so
um
I believe all the ministers and Jack Dio Morso and Ali,
mhm.
Prime Minister also should take a break, take a vacation, right? Literally forget Guyana in a sense. Take a vacation from politics. Go somewhere, learn something, spend some time on a beach if you have to, and then come back and say, well, hey, I am refreshed and I have a different perspective about life. You all need this. I personally believe you all need this. You could
That's
even tour Guyana for Christ's sake. Because
that
if you're
is
coming back with the same mindset, brother, we get a problem.
yeah, it gotta change though. Just
Mm.
about time for us to wrap it up. Make sure you check us out tomorrow in the morning. Tomorrow, the WW Day on Majestic Music Radio. We're gonna have that great music coming out of Guyana, South America. Of course, follow us on the social media page. Um, drop us your comments in the comment section. Hope you had a great evening here with us. We're gonna be back with you next Tuesday with some more great conversation, great topics. Yeah, hope you have a great rest of the evening. Before we leave, Martin, the disclaimer, bro. And I have to say, say that Sherwin had to leave on an emergency. So shout out to Sherwin. Get home
Yes, yes,
safely,
yes.
bro. Yeah.
Take it easy, brother. So the disclaimer reads: the views, opinions, and statements expressed in the conversation are solely those of the individual hosts and guests, and do not necessarily reflect the views or opinions of our advertisers, Majestic Music Radio, Gem Radio, or Gem Network. The content of the show is intended for informational and entertainment purposes only and should not be considered as professional advice. Listeners' discretion is advised. Neither the station nor the network assumes any responsibility or liability for the accuracy, completeness, or validity of the information presented. All content is subject to change without prior notice, which means we might delete it if we say something wrong. But as always, you can Google it, and we like to do our research before we come on. That way
Yeah.
we're very learned.
Make sure you fact check. The fact checking is the thing
Mhm.
that we call
And
it.
I think I did said you have to correct me during the process. So I might be wrong on a couple of dates, a little time frame here and there, but this is where our brilliant lawyer friends and
Come in.
individuals, regular guys, would come in and give us your different opinion and the facts if we do
Yep.
have it wrong. All right. With
Check us
that
out
being
next
said, make
week.
sure you enjoy night
Yeah.
tomorrow,
Morning.
tomorrow morning.
Turn up
While you're
early.
going to work, it's Wednesday, right? So Wednesday wine. Make sure you tune in to Gem Radio, Majestic Music Radio, Slam Radio.
My
Wherever you're
exclusive radio
listening us
from
from.
radio. Yep.
Yes,
The only
yes,
syndicated
yes.
program from Guyana. The only syndicated
Mhm.
show from Guyana. Right? The Rush
Yes,
in
sir.
the mornings. Right? From 8 to 11.
Guy
Check us out
industry
tomorrow.
show, man.
Yep. Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yep. It was a great
Malachi,
evening.
brother.
Yeah, it was great. Good to have Sherwin join us back again after a little hiatus with what's going on in terms of the job situations and traveling.
Yes, yes.
Um, Make sure you follow us. Tomorrow is going to be an interesting discussion as well, because Wednesdays we jump into the topics as well. We're going to be doing a lot of discussion on a few other issues that are in the news. But we had to highlight
Mm-hmm.
a few issues, including this issue with Baby Skello and the law tonight. So, you know, hope you have a great evening. And of course, check us out
Take it
tomorrow.
easy.
Yep. For them people who drive in, watch it. Heroes
Mm-hmm.
Highway getting couple mash up and crash up. Like people never see Broad Road before. Never see
Well,
comfort see a bad
they
thing.
clearly never. They
Never.
clearly never did.
Never. But you
Guys, follow me on social media platform at Martain Al-Ameen. Of course, the cutest guy behind in front of cameras these days. I will do more on posting insightful discussions on social media. So you guys could check it out. Of course, follow the conversation page, keep up to date. Follow Gem Networks where we relay information and broadcast different programs. And yeah, take it easy. All right.
Yep.
Malachi, brother. On love,
Peace
man.
and love, bro. Morning time. You don't know.
Mm-hmm.